Hey everyone, welcome back to Portugal and Beyond. It's Jorik. I hope you're having a fantastic day. This video is part 3 in a playlist that I am putting together on investing in Portugal real estate. I've made several videos over a year and a half of doing a YouTube channel, and I wanted to start this playlist because I was getting more questions about buying property from many of you because housing values have exploded, let's say in the US, Canada, as well as some other regions. Most people coming to Portugal rent and then buy. We were one of the few that actually bought before we moved, but most people rent and buy. What I'm finding is more people are looking to not rent as long and buy earlier or buy right away if it makes sense for them. So this video I put on the thumbnail and the title is 6 tips when negotiating your property in Portugal. A couple of things I want to say. This is not about negotiating the price or what strategy you should have. If the value is X, start at X minus Y and then you come to a certain number. Everybody has their own formula or their own system for negotiating. So I don't think it's right for me to come up with a video because our way of negotiating may be completely different than yours. But I want to give you 6 different things to think about that the seller is thinking about, or how things operate in Portugal, which are most likely different than your country when you're negotiating property and real estate there. So, as I had mentioned in my last video, price is all over the place. It's like the Wild West. And giving you the example from the people below us, one of the owners was just slapping on a price on a property that is not tied to any square meter value in Lisbon. It's not tied to any relevance. He's just pulling a number out of the hat and hoping, as he put it, one of you foreigners or one of you Americans will buy it. So that's sometimes what you're dealing with. And even though you're looking on Idealista, Remax, different websites to get a load or a feel for price, realize that's just a number. That's just a number that I think you can negotiate. Hopefully, in more places you have more room for negotiate than others. So that leads me to point number 1 or tip number 1. So Lisbon, Porto, the Algarve, and some of the Silver Coast, which is kind of the Atlantic coast from east of Lisbon, Ericeira, up to south of Porto. That's called the Silver Coast. Frankly, much of it's overpriced in my opinion, and it's difficult to negotiate. So it's the double whammy of you're paying too much or the starting price is way too high. So even if you do a good job negotiating, you're still paying overvalue or whatever that square meter is, which I think is a garbage here and can't be utilized truthfully in Portugal anyway. So you may say, well, you're living in Lisbon, yeah, but we also were looking at properties in 2016, 2017, bought in 2018. So pre-pandemic, and things were, I'll frankly say, more affordable and not as ridiculous. Every year, even through the pandemic, prices have gotten to be out of what many people have been able to afford in many of those areas. And the main reason for that is 80% of the properties in Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve need work. They need something. They need to be renovated. They're fixer-uppers, or they need things like heating and cooling units added. There needs to be some additional work done. So there's only 20% of the properties out there that are new or newly renovated. And so that becomes part of the issue. People are fighting for those properties. So there's not as much room to negotiate in those particular areas. So that's tip number 1 or point number 1. So tip 2, and this is speaking specifically to U.S. investors or people looking to move here and retire from the U.S. This is not the U.S. market. It doesn't function anywhere near it. So for example, in the U.S. market, many places, metropolitan places, you're used to paying X plus Y, meaning the property is listed at, let's say, 500,000 US. You have to put in a bid for 550 and it may go for 590. To give you an example, and many of you may have been caught in that type of scenario. That doesn't happen here. There are not bidding wars for property. So that's something that it's a different mindset. We have buildings here that have been open pre-pandemic, so they were new or newly renovated from 2017, 2018, 2019, and some of them in our district still have not had all 12 or 15 of their apartments rented out for several years now. So we'll see what happens as the world opens up, if those apartments get sold. So you don't have to worry about day one, something gets listed, I have to put an offer the first day I see something, or else I'm going to lose out. It just doesn't work that way here at all. In fact, I think the sellers are counting on you paying a Wild West price that they just slap on something, thinking that this is the U.S. market. It is not that. So just have to get a different mindset and take a deep breath when you come here, because it doesn't work that way. So again, that's for folks that are watching this from the U.S. Number three, it kind of leads into number three, is that you are competing with other foreigners for property here, especially new and newly renovated property. You're not competing against the Portuguese. And that's not a knock to the Portuguese. That's not at all. In fact, many of the Portuguese that we know that might be able to afford property, our property, let's say, there's no way in the world we're going to pay that price for that property, because so much of the city center areas, Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve, as well as even on the Azores, Madeira, and many other areas, even rural areas in Portugal, the prices for property, even for renovated property or things that need a lot of work, people are trying to take advantage that a foreigner is going to see it and a foreigner is going to make an offer and buy it, which will still end up being more than what they would sell to a fellow Portuguese countryman or country person. So that's something that you have to realize, is you're competing against a small market of foreigners that are looking to move here or buy something as an investment. You're not competing against the rest of the country, because the rest of the country, in many cases, I'll say it, they're not crazy enough to pay foreigner prices for property. That's just the way it is. So number four, all of those kind of lead into number four, which is patience. Taking your time. Things move slowly here. Even pre-pandemic, we made an offer on this place in 2018. It took 6 months to close the property. Getting things finalized, even that negotiation process, can take several months. And then from there, the mortgage process can take several months. So it may be a year or more between when you made your first offer to when you get the keys. So having patience, I would say one of the main reasons why several people we know here rent and are going to continue to rent as opposed to buying is because they just lost patience. They're going, okay, it's been 6 months and we haven't moved anywhere. And the countries that they were coming from, and I'll say primarily the US and Canada, by then they had already had several mortgage payments made. They had moved in months prior and had already been living in a place where here they were still getting to the mortgage piece or trying to close on a property, of which they still would be months from moving in. So again, patience, things move slow. You don't have to bid on something right away. You don't have to overpay on something. Keep looking at properties online. Keep having a realtor look at them and send you photos and videos. Come here maybe 2 or 3 times before you make a decision. So patience is very important. I know it's in short supply for all of us. I'm not the most patient person either, but you really need it. Point 5, the 5th tip when negotiating the property, and this I think is huge and never came up in a blog or video prior, but I hope you're thinking about this moving forward. You need to know if the property that you're buying was an inherited property or not. And what I mean by that is the property up for, that's being sold right now, was it most recently in the family and it's being sold because it was an inheritance, meaning someone passed away, and I'll say great-grandma, great-grandma, great-grandpa, grandma, an uncle, an aunt passed, and so one of the children or great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren now have the property through inheritance, and they're selling it, as opposed to a foreigner or a Portuguese person moving and they're selling it like a normal transaction. And the reason you need to know if it's an inheritance versus anything else, there's a 90% chance there's no mortgage on that. And then other than them paying taxes twice a year and then potential utilities on the property, let's say electric, gas, water, they're paying next to nothing. So from a negotiation standpoint, they can slap a number on it. They can wait years, because unless they have a family issue that they need the money right away, and what we're finding and talking to a lot of Portuguese, they don't. They don't need to flip a property or sell it right away. They can take months or sit on it for years. Your negotiating power kind of erodes, because if you really want that property, you need to come closer to their price, because they don't have an incentive to need to have to sell. Now, if that property does have a big mortgage on it and they don't have the ability to soak that up and keep the property, then they're more willing to sell. But you do need to know if that property is on the market due to inheritance and someone passing away or someone getting that property unexpectedly, because that will help you determine your strategy, because you may start negotiating and realize, okay, they could sit on this for 5 years before they change the price. So I need to either A, pay their price, or B, move on and look at another property. So very important. I don't think many people realize that's something that I think you should be asking as you're going through your negotiation strategy. And then sixth, and I think this is straightforward and common sense for people, don't be someone's lottery ticket. As I've mentioned, with real life examples for people, 2 apartments below us, as well as other apartments that I've seen throughout this community, our district, throughout Lisbon and throughout Portugal, oftentimes people slap a number because it's going to be close to a golden visa number. So let's say 350,000 out in the country, or $500,000 when it used to be Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve and Silver Coast when it was eligible for that. Properties that were worth 300,000 legitimately were now somehow worth 500,000, or that's what the sale price was, because people wanted and thought that a golden visa person will need to pay that amount and invest it to be able to get the property and then get the expedited citizenship. Because that doesn't exist in the main areas, and when I say main, Lisbon, Algarve, Porto, Silver Coast, please, when you are thinking about your property, and so many of you are retired or will be coming close to retirement when you're looking at investing in a property, don't chip away any more of your life savings or your retirement savings than you have to. I would say, and this is something that's more of just a basic negotiation, go in with, you know what your bottom price is, you know kind of what your floor and your ceiling. Don't go above your ceiling. Don't go above that and build a second floor or third floor with your pricing strategy. Set a budget, set a price, and stick to it. And if you can't get there, look at another property. There's a lot of property up for sale here. As you're seeing, there's thousands, tens of thousands of properties up for sale. You may run into the one that is the one, and if you want to pay it, go for it. If you don't want to negotiate and you're tired of it, that's your obligation and your right to do that. But I truly believe that there are enough properties here that you can find either brand new, newly renovated, or fixer-upper states, a fixer-upper that you can get the price that you're looking for. But you do have to be patient. You have to realize, especially those of you from the U.S., it's not the U.S. market. It doesn't work that way. The mechanics are different. Understand if it's an inherited property or not. And know that if you're in the main areas of Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve, you may not, what I just said about you can find your price, it may not work out as well. You might need to find a different place just outside of those city centers, just north of the Algarve, around Lisbon, in the outlying areas around Porto, or you may need to think about other countries to live in too. If that's, if you're not dead set on being in Portugal, look at some other places. There might be some other places that have better value and within your budget. But I would say at all costs, don't go above your budget, because if you're retired, you don't have a lot of time, quite frankly, to make that money back. I don't think it's worth it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that these 6 tips are things that you can utilize as you're looking at property. And I will come up with Part 4 will be coming in a couple of weeks, but I hope this one will help you as you're considering realtors and property in Portugal. As always, thank you so much for taking the time and enjoy your travels.